Before this episode, we just wanted to say a little something about Kelly Preston losing her battle with breast cancer. On this show, we make fun of a lot of things,
Hmm.
but we really respect the creative processes of everybody involved in these movies, and we don't mean to make light of her contribution to the art of filmmaking.
Absolutely, and just not trying to defend anything, but we did record the episode before her passing, but it will be
Yeah.
released after her passing, which is why we're going back and putting this at the beginning of the video.
Yeah. So if you think you might have a problem with, I mean, we don't really touch on her that much through the
No,
thing.
no, we don't.
But if you have a problem with that, maybe just skip this episode and, come back and see us in the next one.
Hey, watching with Dan and Tony. Hey, watching with Dan and Tony. It's like watching, yeah.
Hey guys, we're back. It's Hate Watching with Dan
Tony.
and this week we're gonna be doing Tony's pick. And Tony, what was your pick this week?
It's a real doozy, a real gem of a movie. Oscar almost nominated, I think. I think it was really close. It was right. It was probably on all the ballots. They just, with all the politics. Anyhow, we watched Gotti. Woo! So
From
good.
2018.
2018. It's recent.
So it did come out in theaters, and it did terribly at what little box office it had
Yeah.
available to it.
So I looked it up. It was about a $10 million budget, and it made I think around 4 million. So, almost made its money back. Really close.
And
close.
who's the director?
Oh, see, this is why it breaks my heart, Dan, because I love Kevin Connolly. I love him. I think he's great, and I wish the best for him. I really do. But his career's over, right? It has to be. This was so
No.
bad.
No,
I don't.
no.
I fired him. He's out. I don't know, man.
And who is Kevin Connolly?
Kevin Connolly is E from Entourage, which is a
Yeah,
show
he
that
is.
I love. Probably problematic now, but at the time it was a great show.
I went in preparation and just watched the final episode of season 8 of Entourage this morning.
Oh, great! Did you also watch
You-
the movie?
I don't think I've ever seen the movie, and the movie
Don't. It's
wasn't
not.
on HBO that I could see.
There's probably a reason for
and
that.
and it is literally the most sort of white privilege,
Oh yeah.
like magical. At the very end, Ari's left the company, and there's Lloyd, and Lloyd's like, "You're my role model. You're my everything. How can I live my life without you?"
How can I ever survive? That's what they should have played there if they didn't. Oh, for
And
sure.
there you go.
The whole show is, that could be an episode on itself. It's just steeped in white privilege. I mean, this guy, he's not even a good actor. That's like the crux of the show is he's not a good actor, but he's just, keeps making it, which is ridiculous. I love it. However, you watched it originally, right? Entourage?
I probably missed maybe the first one or two seasons, but I watched, probably 3 through 8. I probably watched
Okay.
every.
So
When did he make the Medellin the first? Is that the first?
that's
movie?
what I'm bringing up right now is Medellin. No, Medellin's not the first. Medellin is he's got a couple of blockbusters under his belt, and now people are not paying attention to him, and he's like, I got to make a statement. And they find this script for Medellin, which they all think is this amazing script, and he's so excited, and then it's a train wreck. Gotti is the real life Medellin. How weird is that? Kevin Connolly, E from Entourage, makes his very own Medellin, and it's unbelievable.
The parallels.
Life, man, life is crazy.
Oh yeah, because he makes some independent film, then he makes Aquaman,
Yep.
and then he makes Aquaman kind of does
No,
and then he has to-
Aquaman crushes. They beat Spider-Man's
Oh.
open weekend. Listen, I've watched this show many times over. It was like my mantra when I moved out to LA. I was like, this is gonna be my life, dude. And spoiler alert, it's not. It's not my life at all. Anyhow, we should
By
probably
the
talk
end,
about Gotti.
Turtle is like almost rail thin and a millionaire.
Yes. I mean, that's the dream. I played Wii just as much as he did, and I did not lose any weight. I call bullshit.
Okay, Gotti.
Yes, got it.
So hit us with your opening statements.
My opening statements is what happened. That kind of encompasses how I feel about the entire movie, because Gotti, the real life Gotti, is so interesting to me. So cool. I mean, obviously, a bad guy, I get it. But his life, his rise to power, and like just the way that the media loves him, it's so interesting to me. And we don't see any of that in this movie. We see none of that.
Well, I think there's an emblematic scene kind of right near the beginning. He's walking through the streets, his streets.
Mm-hmm.
And like a guy comes up to him, and like the boxing place shut down, and because the rent was going up, and Gotti's like, I'm gonna fix that. And Gotti walks on.
But did he?
I mean, we didn't see it in the movie.
Right.
The sort of assumption is, I guess he did it because that's who he's supposed to be.
But I don't see that ever, other than the fact that I know that that's the kind of guy he was in real life. This movie doesn't tell me that he's this like great community guy, but then also this terrible like freaking gangster. That's the movie I want to see. I want to see that paradigm. I want to see him be in the people and be like loved and be like this very, they describe him on his wiki page as like a flamboyant personality. Where the hell is that in John Travolta's performance? He spends the whole movie like grimacing. What? And it's that weird. Does that look the whole time? I have no idea.
It's true. He always seems like this sort of, his energy is always generally terrible.
Yes. Which I do not believe to be the case in real life. I watched a couple of clips of him getting arrested in real life and then a couple from the trial, and he's smiling through all of that. Like he's making jokes. He's like walking down the street in handcuffs, like smiling and talking to the people. I was like, what? Where is that? Where is that personality that I can like root for, even though he's a bad guy?
And I think that's sort of the crux of what's wrong with the movie, because what they show us is his dark inner side that was always going on. And it's like, we get it. We get it that he's a terrible person.
Right.
But they never give us the part where we're like, oh, we never like fall in love with the guy, or never, we're always like, oh, right. He's mostly a dick, but he does care, sort of.
Right. There's lines in there that are like, oh, I care. And it's like, but show me that you care. You can't just say, I don't know. I don't want to bring up like a bad analogy, but like if I was a bad guy and like, Dan, we're friends, and if I just like repeatedly hit you in the face, but then I was like, no, I like you, you're a good guy, whap, hit you in the face, you're not going to believe me, because who gives a shit what you say? Show me you care. Maybe I get you ice for your eye. Then you'll know I care. Sorry.
Well, and there was a couple of scenes where he was like super abusive to his whole family, and then they'd end with the line, but we, maybe even a voiceover, but in the end, we all loved each other.
Right? Like, okay, nobody believes you. Although I will say, and maybe this is jumping ahead, when he slaps the shit out of his two kids after they get in the fight, that's the best part of the movie. Just slap. I was like, cool, man. Now I'm in. Good for you.
And yeah, the movie, it doesn't ever, I mean, and that's what a movie kind of wants to do. It wants to tell you something is going to happen and then show it happening, and then, sort of what the reactions, but his son kills a guy in a bar fight. Gotti comes, beats him up. And then I don't think we ever dealt with anything about that.
Not at all.
Like there's a dead body, they reference it very specifically.
Yep.
And it sure seems like the kid's going to get tight. Don't bring your bullshit business or something. He does a whole business line.
Yeah. And I think that part of my problem is we don't deal with anything really.
No.
Nothing seems to have consequences. I think. Oh, so okay. Here's what I think is the big problem with the movie. It's based off of the book that John Jr. wrote. John Jr., right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so I really want to read that book because the movie, it feels to me like the movie is trying to show how much John Jr. loved his dad, even though he was a bad guy.
Yes.
But at the same time, I don't feel the love. I'm just told the love. Like, there's never a moment where I'm like, oh, I get it. I get why you're so infatuated with your dad. He's so cool. He's so, like, he's a powerful, but I never feel that in the movie itself. So I have this weird feeling of the movie trying to tell me I'm supposed to love Gotti, but I never do. And so that there's a disconnect there that I didn't.
Well, and that is the major issue with the movie is that it's 2 or 3 movies glued togetere.
Yes.
And it should be the story of the kid. That it should be
Dan, that's in my notes.
Oh, sure.
Look at you. This is why we're best friends. Wow. That was cold.
I know. but you still love me.
You full on Gotti'd me.
See? But I mean, that's the whole thing is if it had been from the kid's point of view, but it couldn't be about the kid. That was the whole thing.
Right.
Because they wanted they wanted all those Gotti storylines, which are him killing a guy in a bar or restaurant and then him they want him doing all these things, but they also want the kid sort of doing all his things. And there's not enough room for all of that stuff for him to be a truly central character.
Unless they Benjamin Button it, and this is a 3-hour movie.
We should probably get Kevin Connolly on the phone and say,
Kev Dog, listen.
Hashtag release the
Director's
Kevin Connolly.
cut.
The Gotti directors. Is that what they do with Snyder? Isn't that what
the Snyder? Oh, right. So this would be like the Kevin cut.
The Kevin cut.
The Gotti Kevin cut. That's what we need, people. More Gotti. That's what was wrong with the movie. It was too short. That's what it was. I need double Gotti.
Another 45 minutes to just really pad out all those plot lines. So we have to start at the beginning.
We can
try. Start at the ending. Because we have this bonus John Travolta wearing like this different outfit where he sort of is Brooklyn Bridge in the background, or there's a big bridge in the background.
It's a big bridge. I've never been in New York. I don't really know.
And he does a whole, let me tell you something about New York. New York is the greatest city in the world.
It's my
city. And then he says the line that is one of the greatest movie lines of all time. This life, you end up one of 2 ways, dead or in jail. I did both.
Okay. There's so many things wrong with this scene for me. Do you want to, you know what? You give your thoughts first, and then I'm going to jump in.
I mean, what are the thoughts? I've
got some thoughts. I've got some thoughts.
Let's finish because let me do the last.
Yeah. We got to do the full circle.
At the very end, so it's just this weird insert, very beginning, very end, and his final speech a little shorter. Listen to me and listen to me good. You'll never see a guy like me if you live to be 5,000. Okay, Tony. So unpack what that makes you feel like.
Well,
as a viewer,
first of all, as a part of this movie, doesn't make any fucking sense, Dan. What? So, this is so frustrating to me. One, who's he talking to in this scene? He's talking. Is he talking straight to the viewer? This is just John. Yeah. This is just John Travolta then, because this isn't the character. The character doesn't break the fourth wall for the entire movie. You can't do 2 inserts that bookend the movie with him breaking the fourth wall. My second part of it is, when is this in his life then? If this is the character, when is John Gotti telling us this? Because 1, he knows his life and his death, so this has to be the afterlife. Is this the ghost of Gotti? And my problem. Hold on. The problem with that is Gotti doesn't believe in God. So that doesn't make sense for the character. He doesn't believe in an afterlife. He says it in the movie. There's no fucking God. He says it in the movie. So then to give me an afterlife in the movie itself doesn't make any sense for your own character that you set up. That's so stupid to me. So,
but you see, I think it is like it's the afterlife. Well, you know what it is? It's the muse of Gotti that speaks to all of us as creators, as people that are, take in movies. That's him. It's kind of like a Shakespearean thing.
You're gonna put Shakespeare into this movie? Woof. That feels like a stretch to me. How did it make you feel, Dan?
It was just, that final line. I did both. You're just like, I mean, talk about like literally, what this movie is not about. I mean, it's not really about the jail experience.
No, I would love that movie. I'm curious.
It's not really about, dying.
No,
it's, okay.
My other problem with that is he didn't die in the life. So that line is kind of a lie. Because first of all, everybody dies. So that's a stupid thing to say, John Gotti. Like in this life, you either end up behind bars or you die. That means in the streets. You die in the streets living the life. You don't die from cancer. Not that cancer's not terrible. It's awful. I'm not saying that it wasn't a bad way to go. I'm just saying it wasn't in the streets. The guy died in prison, not because of prison, just because of life. And so to try to sound like a badass at the beginning of your own movie, like I want to punch you in the face, right in the jaw.
Oh, poor John Gotti. Poor John Gotti.
Well, he'd probably kill me.
So then we start the movie again with, so we have the weird framing sequence, which is, 55-year-old John Gotti or 50-year-old John Gotti wearing these clothes that we never sort of see him in. Mm-hmm. Then we go to like prison John Gotti, who's had cancer and has had his butt put on his face or some part of his
tit on his face or something like that.
Face.
Yeah,
tit on his face. And this was one of the things that really annoyed me. They roll him in there like Hannibal Lecter, and then he makes a joke about
Hannibal Lecter.
About Hannibal Lecter. And I mean, I think this sort of goes to, some of your ideas. This would, for us to like laugh at this or get this, we would have had to seen a photo of John Gotti being wheeled around in a Hannibal Lecter situation to sort of, because when you look at it, you're like, that's like Hannibal Lecter. And then he points out like Hannibal Lecter. And then you're like, well, why are they treating him like, there was no point of it.
Yeah.
And I said, well, the point actually, there was a point there, but they didn't do it. And this whole movie is kind of a, one of the other movies that this is a takedown of the legal system.
I mean, I did get those themes.
But I mean, that's the thing. This thing just keeps on nesting all these things because it wants to be these these 4 movies.
And then it's none of them because they're all watered down.
At the end, it has, we're just going to jump around this movie because there's no real reason to go.
Well, they jump around. Why should we be any different? I didn't understand a single plot point because they're jumping back and forth 20 to 30 years constantly. I never knew where I was in time. So why should we be any different? Let's do this.
And it's pretty interesting that a movie like Benjamin Button, which we did last week, is more coherent on an understanding of time and nature.
Who saw that coming?
I did not. I felt Benjamin Button was a complete mess when it came to that. But in the end, I could sort of piece back together what happened. This movie,
you did a great job.
It's just a giant blur of like all these things that happen. So at the very end, they have the words on the screen. That's probably called something in movie lingo.
We're not in the movie biz. Who knows?
And it's like they prosecuted him for this amount of time. They had 100 witnesses. These were all murderers and killers, and they let all of them go. And so you're like, so this is about how us not wanting John Gotti to be out in the world, we're the problem.
Yeah, we're the problem. And when he's dying, he's talking to his son. He's like, "Don't trust the." When does he do the "Don't trust the cops" line? In the movie somewhere,
there's a whole sort of monologue in the last 15 minutes or so where he's like the only thing I have in my cell is your indictment, and I've gone over this 1,000 times, and do not do this. And that was actually a really interesting, and another interesting thing that would have been interesting for the movie about the kid, because to tell you the truth, I had no idea if it felt like he signed it.
He did.
And
I'm pretty sure.
And it was supposed to be like 3 years, but then they try him like 3 more times.
Yep.
And I don't understand if that's after he got out and of course the kid, and they also play this weird game where they show real newspapers. So you see a picture of real John Jr. at that point, and looks like an older man,
Yeah.
gray hair, and then the kid sitting there looks like he's 22 with greased back hair.
That's another thing that made the jump so hard is they didn't take the time to make anyone other than John Travolta look older or younger at all. The first time we meet John Jr.'s wife, I looked this up because we were kind of confused.
She was 16
She's
or 17.
16.
Supposedly.
She's like 27. Like, I'm sorry. They gave her poofy hair, but she's like in her 30s. I don't care what you say. And then, like, so John Jr. never ages in the movie, and we go back and forth. He changes his hair a little, like once it's slicked back and then it's not slicked. I don't know. I don't know if that was what they were trying to do, but I never knew how old this guy was. I don't know how old he is when the movie begins. I don't know how old he is when he's out of jail and like hugging his family. I have no idea.
Well, I think he's like 40.
I think that makes sense just with
He
how
looks like-
Gotti
he
is
looks like
aging.
Yeah, I think he's like 40.
But that
And
guy doesn't look 40.
No.
I mean, he looks great
No.
for 40. Good for him.
He looks like he's 23. Yeah. No.
Speaking of that, I've seen pictures of John Jr. and now maybe I'm going to get like whacked for this, but do you think he cast the movie? Because the guy that's playing John Jr. in the movie is a beautiful young man. And the pictures I've seen of John Jr. are not so.
Okay, this sort of leads me into another thing. But it sort of ties back to that.
Okay.
Is that immediately when the movie starts, I'm like, that's the wife? And I was confused because when I think of Victoria Gotti, I think of the platinum blonde hair.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess that was after he passed away, she went with the platinum hair, and then they had the TV show Growing Up Gotti.
Yes.
Which I've watched a few times. And if I think about the way John Jr. looks, he looks like all the kids in Growing Up Gotti. He looks exactly like all those kids.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
And that's why it never bothered me.
Interesting.
Because it always felt like, oh, okay, that genetics really do look very similar to that.
Okay.
But I mean, there you have a whole thing that, is just because of the way my brain, and I will say it bugged me the whole movie that she didn't have the blonde hair.
Sure. Yeah, totally understandable. I didn't even, until I looked stuff up later, I had no idea what she looked like. Because I'd never seen that reality show, which I feel like I missed out on a great deal of content there.
It's just Jersey Shore. Shore.
Great show.
Yeah, it's just like,
love Jersey Shore. So I think I'll go look at reruns of this. I think it's got to be somewhere. Also, total side note, when I was doing research, it seems like the grandson of John Gotti recently got arrested for like drug possession or something like that. So it's still going. The saga is still going. And I feel like this movie is such a missed opportunity for some really interesting stories. And that's what made me so mad about it.
Yeah. They really needed to. I mean, like we said at the beginning, it should have just been about the son's relationship to him, as opposed to like really. But they're stuck. And once again, this movie, they started working on it in 2010. Barry Levinson was attached at one point.
Yeah.
It just, it was another development mess.
I read that Joe Pesci was attached at one point. What?
And Al Pacino.
Please. Oh God, what a different movie. What a different movie that would have been.
Pesci is probably the one person that actually could have pulled this off because he looks like him, and you could feel that Pesci could go into that charming and evil, switch back and forth very, very actively
here's my thing is because I think Travolta can do that. Have you, and this is going to be stupid, but I mean, some of his 90s movies, that was his whole thing. Is like the charming bad guy, like Face Off and Broken Arrow. You ever seen that? Like, that's what he does. He's like this cool, sexy bad guy, like that you kind of root for because you're like, oh shit, he's cooler than I am. I want to do his stuff. That's what I wanted from this. I wanted to be infatuated with Gotti. That was like my whole thing.
Yeah, and they certainly, occasionally try to sell that point, you know,
Mhm.
like that the Fourth of July thing. There's also a thing where they Gotti, you know, because the cops come to shut down their street party, and Gotti just goes up there and says, "What is he?" Just sort of intimidates them away. What are
Well,
you gonna
yeah, he's like,
do?
"What are you gonna
Kick
take
us
away the
all out?
fireworks that we put on all the time? I don't think so." And then he's like, "You got bail money?" And he's like, "In spades." He's like, "Well, then light them up." And I was like, "What a cool thing!" Yeah, man, just swinging that around. I love that.
But I think your problem is, and this is, you know, you're up against The Godfather, right? Where that's what that. I mean, I gotta say, I think I've watched Godfather the first one, and I've seen like probably all of Godfather 2, but in different, you know, I've never
Sure,
sat down and watched
watched
the
it all
entire
the way
thing.
through.
And you know, you understand with that movie, it's about him, you know, it's about the Godfatherness,
Mhm.
where that's what it's about, and it's also about how family sort of turns on each other. And this, you know, all mob things are the same thing.
Yeah.
It's about those, this is your friend, you know. He does the whole thing at one point. The one guy, he's, I never trust a guy that's never been in jail, because he doesn't want to go to jail, and
Right.
that's Sammy the Bull, who turns on him and finally puts him away.
Which I didn't even realize in the movie that's what happened until I read
Oh,
later, and I was like, "Oh, okay, I get it."
well, the issue with that is, there's Sammy the Bull, and then there's this other guy. I don't know, his name's Johnson or something, and they're at
Sure.
one trial, and they're like, he can't go into jail because he's a confidential witness, and he's like, "I'm not John. Don't have me killed. I'm not." And you're like,
How can I kill
I
a
didn't understand.
ghost?
Oh yeah, how can
Also
I
a good
kill?
line.
And but you don't understand if he is a confidential witness or not. You just,
Yep.
the trials and all these things are just so muddy.
It's just skated over. Like there's no, we never get into anything to really understand anything that happens in his life. And that's at the end, I was so confused. I was like, I don't know why he went to prison. I legitimately don't know why he went to prison.
It's because Sammy the Bull really
I
did
had
him
to,
over,
I had to
did him
Google,
over
I
hard.
had to
Yeah.
Google that shit. If the end of your movie is him going to jail, and I don't know why it happened, you messed up. You messed up somewhere. So I had to look it up. And it's a classic mob story. Why didn't I see that? Where's the tension between them? I read it like in the courtroom where he's testifying against Gotti. Like they were just like staring daggers at each other. Like there was just this intense heat
Oh
in the courtroom. Like I want to see that scene. I want
no,
to see any sort of like real scene in this movie. And I
no.
don't get it. I don't get it at all.
Well, I mean, I think that's because Gotti just sort of he's, in a way, he sort of skates on everything, you know? And I mean,
The Teflon Don.
he is the Teflon Don.
Is he?
But I mean,
Because the movie doesn't tell me that. Sorry, keep going.
well, it once again, it tells you that, but it doesn't show you
it
that.
literally tells me, but I'm like, why did he get that name? I don't understand it until, again, I did research later. I was like, oh, interesting. He just keeps getting out because of witness intimidation and other, like, they tamper with the witness. Oh, why don't I see this in the movie? There's so much cool stuff that happens.
I mean, the only two things he really does is kill that first guy, which gets him to be a made man.
Yeah, it's like his induction, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's the thing that got him to be a made man. And then the whole thing when he's in jail and they let him out to go see the dentist, and he kills another guy to clean up some mess that I don't remember what even that mess was.
I have no idea why he did it, but I liked that he did it. I just wish I had context. Like, and also, like, how did he do it? They don't really, they never show me how powerful he is. So I spent the whole movie confused about why everyone was afraid of this guy.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think that's the whole idea of mob stuff. It's hard to show all that because it's, you know, they have the big boss guy who gets killed at a certain point,
Paul.
and Paul,
I can't remember
who
his last name.
they do a weird setup with him, and then they kill him, and you just like go, these guys, they just walk around. They're not intimidated. They're not afraid. And
Mhm.
it's like any two-bit hood could just walk up and kill them.
Yeah.
And I don't know. It's, yeah. Ugh. God, Gotti.
Gotti.
Good movie pick, Tony.
Thank you. I think it was a good one because there's a lot to. I'm so mad. Like I'm
Okay.
genuinely so mad about it.
So the kid at one point joins the New York Academy, which is like a military thing.
Yes.
And then this is right after he wanted to be a cop for Halloween at one point.
Yes.
And the dad screams at him not to ever be a cop. So it's okay to be military, but it's not okay to be a cop.
Very confusing. Also confusing, in that same scene, he tells him he can't be a baseball player for Halloween. And I want to know more information on that. What does he have against baseball players? I understand why he doesn't like cops. Sure, tell him not to be a cop, but why you tell him not to be a baseball player? What's the problem there? He could have a great future in baseball. You don't know, John. You're not even around for the kid. You're in jail. Maybe he's got a great arm. I was very confused by that. And there's no context at all. It was just like one throwaway line. I need to know more.
Frankie gets hit by a car.
Oh, Christ. We got to talk about this scene, Dan.
So Frankie's riding down the street on his bike. And he's weaving and deceiving and just he's just that's what what's his name used to say about on basketball.
Okay.
Weaving and deceiving. Clyde Frazier.
Okay.
He used to do the Knicks play-by-play, and he'd say all sorts of incredibly colorful, wonderful stuff. So so Frankie's on his little squeaky bike, and they telegraph this accident so hard
for like 5 minutes. I don't think it's quite as egregious as Benjamin Button.
Oh, okay. I thought, there's one other scene that's more egregious in this movie.
Oh, in its own movie. Fair. Well, yeah, get there. But it's still, like, you see, first of all, I think they use the same shot of him swerving twice. I'm almost positive it's the exact same shot because they're like, oh, hey, we don't have enough footage of him riding the bike. Just play the same one over again. It's fine. No one will know. And then they don't. I mean, I get it. You don't want to show the accident, but I'm very confused on how the accident happened.
Who knows? It doesn't matter.
It matters to me a little bit only because he's swerving in the middle of the road. It's not like he's on the sidewalk and he darts out into the middle of the road. He's literally going back and forth in the middle of the road. How don't you see the kid? What are you doing in the car?
But you see, that's why I say it doesn't matter, because this movie treats it as it doesn't matter. Because the movie does not want to, it like sets it up. It shows, it's almost like you show one train coming at the other train, coming at the other train, coming at the other train.
Just cut back and forth,
then they
back
just
and
crash.
forth, back and forth.
So there's no suspense. You're like, those trains are going to crash. And then the trains crash. And you're like, they crashed because they're trains.
Yeah, it was like, saw that coming.
And so then, of course, they begin to grieve.
Do they? Yeah. Yep.
Gotti cries, and then the mom cries, and he has to yell at the mom to tell her to stop the crying.
Yeah.
Right? Doesn't he yell at her?
He yells at her like after she's doing, there's tons of pills on her bedstand, and he comes in, he's like, enough. We're going to hold him in our hearts forever. And I was like, oh my God, this is so dumb. Like, I wish I wasn't even sad. And that's a problem. If a kid dies in your movie and I don't care at all, I have no emotional connection to any of these characters. That's a problem. That should be an emotional motivator for me and the characters. And I didn't feel that at all. Were you affected by this?
No,
okay.
I didn't care about any, and I mean, and that tells you a lot, because usually what happens, if I get invested, then, like I probably would have been rooting for Gotti to die at some, if like I really hated him, if he was like this really foul person, I'd be like, kill him, kill him. Like there's some movies you get to the point, where you hate that bad guy and the good guy has the knife and he's standing behind him. You're just like, do it. This movie, you're just like, oh, you're like, you're not even happy when he goes to jail. You're not unhappy when he goes to jail. You're just like,
I feel nothing.
Except the part when he comes out and he's like, when he went to the dentist, he walks out and he's like, I'm signing out. He looks everybody in the eye.
And So let's briefly talk about the acting just as like a whole real quick, because that brings up a great point, Dan. Because when he signs back in and he does that weird wink thing that he does, I was like, what just happened, John Travolta, what are you doing? And he fought for this movie, I guess, for like almost a decade, right?
Oh, is that true? I did not know that.
I think he had it for like 8 years as he was attached and wanted to make it, and no one would make it. And so he obviously felt like there was something there that he could do. Sure. And I just didn't see it. Like, I feel bad for, like, this guy fought so hard for this movie, and then it was like, oh, you're okay. Like, you're definitely not great. I don't know. And just the whole acting as a whole, maybe it's Kevin Connolly's fault, because I think like 80% of people in this movie talk in the Marlon Brando whisper. That's like now just synonymous with gangsters. Like, everyone's doing this talk, you know? And when they get in close, you know, they're all doing this. And it's like, guys, not everyone talked like that. Maybe a guy, maybe two. Sure. But like, everyone doesn't talk like that. Be your own person. Be like a real human being. Don't be like a caricature of a gangster. That's what I felt like everyone was.
Good point, Tony.
That was good. You could have been in the movie.
Could have been in the movie.
You should have auditioned.
So the funniest part of the whole movie is after the dude runs over the kid, we get this news story, and the news story is about the guy that witnessed witnessed. I guess the guy gets killed outside of this restaurant. The restaurant owner witnesses it, and he's talking to the police. Mm-hmm. And then the newscaster says that then the guys came back like the next day and sat in his diner and glowered at him. And the next day he sold the diner and moved away and never talked to the police again. Right. I laughed out loud. I thought that was very funny.
I totally forgot that happened, and I wish I would have looked that up, because if that's real.
Oh, it's totally real.
Then I need to see that. Why are you skating over the interesting parts of the story? Like, I want to see the intimidation.
But it was really funny.
Oh, no, sure.
The newscast was really funny. I thought it was really funny.
But is it supposed to be a joke, though? I don't know.
Oh, no. And then there was Stacy Keach. You probably really liked Stacy Keach in there, didn't you?
Which one was Stacy?
You don't know who Stacy Keach is?
I don't remember at this point.
The actor. Stacy Keach was the guy that John Travolta sort of worked for, who's sort of the middle boss. That John's like, you should be the boss. You should be the boss. And then Stacy dies of cancer, of course.
Everyone kind of died of cancer. Must have been going around.
It's not pretty. Everybody in this movie died of cancer. It was pretty sad. I mean, that aspect of it was kind of sad, because Stacy Keach dies of it. Angelo dies of it.
Yep.
Gotti dies of it. It's like,
it's weird. To me, I don't know.
It is surprising. And they did not live to be really ripe old ages. They were seemed like they were all sort of 60-year-olds.
Yep. Yeah, for sure. I wonder what they were doing.
So the Angelo tapes. What are the Angelo tapes?
I again had to look this up because I had no idea. And another super interesting thing, like, first of all, I didn't know everyone was wiretapped. Like, the FBI wiretapped the lodge and like everyone's phones. Why don't I know this? Why don't I know any of this? And then why don't I get to hear the tapes that everyone keeps talking? Like, in court, they're like, the evidence was the tapes. And I was like, well, then play them. Why don't I know what anyone is saying right now?
Nope.
I don't.
They didn't have a tape budget.
Is that
couldn't afford the little tape machine. Couldn't afford that. Had to spend it all on like expensive suits that the actors got to keep at the end of the movie.
Oh God, the suits! What?
What's wrong with the suits?
Well, he's called the Dapper Don as well. Like, he's got several nicknames, and I never felt that either. I didn't even know what the Dapper. Like, I had heard Dapper Don in real life, but I never made the connection to this movie because I don't. In the world, he's not wearing like super fancy clothes, and he's not being like this super. It's just so confusing to me that they got the core character so wrong to me.
Well, I think that's a really interesting thing about all this. Since it is like based on truth, the
Mhm,
house they live in, you're just like, it's just a really suburban, like barely any room.
mhm.
I mean, I think they maybe had a pool. Did they upgrade the house at one point?
I wanna say yes,
I
but
don't remember.
I can't totally remember.
And you're just kind of like, this guy is making hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars, and it's like not going into. I mean,
I did research, Dan. Supposedly, while he was in charge of the Gambino family, he was making between 5 and 20 million a year. Supposedly. Allegedly, I guess is the right word.
yeah. So
And
he's making
I
five
never
million.
why don't you see that?
You never felt that. You always felt like he was living this
Like a
really
poor
just,
guy. Or not
yeah.
poor, but just like a regular guy. So that plays into why I never feel like he's powerful. Like he doesn't seem to be doing anything. He's not making a bunch of money. He's not I don't know. I got very very confused on him.
Yeah. When you think about Casino, in Casino, it's like they always lived in these houses. They had boxes that were full of money. There was jewels, there was furs, there was
Yeah.
everything. And it just this whole thing feels like they were trying to really show what they probably knew where his house was. They probably knew how big that house was. They
Yeah.
probably, and and in some ways that's a problem. I mean, there's at one point at which they go back to that grubby bar where they hang out, and you're
Mhm.
just like, at least in The Sopranos, they got to go to like a cool strip club or
Yeah.
whatever. I mean, not my dream or anything, but at
Sure.
least it was like, if I was one of those guys, that's where I would have wanted to be hanging out all
That's the
day.
life, right? Like that's what when you imagine what this life is like, you imagine a little glitz and glamour along with, the dirt and the grime and the evil, but like you have to be a reason to do all the bad things. It's not just because you want to do bad things, it's because good things come from doing these bad things. Where are the rewards for all of these bad deeds that they're doing? I don't see them.
And you kind of, I mean, that is sort of that give and take that you sort of need from
Mhm.
this kind of movie to make you feel something. And I
Yeah.
mean, just this guy, we say, my dad lived the same life as this guy essentially for most of his life, working as an engineer. And this guy is doing untold horrible things. You know what?
Literally untold, by the way. But
I think Sammy the Bull said he killed 19 people. So I mean,
19 people.
this usually when you think about mob stuff, you're like, well, every once in a while somebody, but Sammy the Bull, I think himself killed 19
Yeah,
people.
he
That's a lot
he
of killing.
testified that he himself killed 19 people. Wow. That's
That's
awesome. I mean, terrible.
that's
But like,
that's
why don't I see any of that?
And then there's a whole thing with Angelo, and Angelo attacks gas pipe, and it fails, and so Angelo gets thrown out of the family, and Junior goes to see him, and then you can't go see him because he's thrown out of when they exile you from mobness, you can't even talk to the exiled guy.
Is that okay? Is that the rule?
I had
I,
never heard this, and I,
okay.
I think it was one of the more interesting aspects of the movie was
Sure.
was sort of dealing with this idea.
Yeah.
But of course, it's just they sort of throw this idea out there. It sort of happens.
And then we
There's
move
no
on.
repercussions for John Jr. He's just told that
Yep.
you can't do this. John Jr. gets made, which I guess was supposed to be super emotional. And it's kind of like, once again, since we know John Jr. is sort of going back in the business, there's no frisson there. There's
Mhm.
no like, he's just another one of these guys.
Just another inductee. Like it doesn't matter at all.
Yeah, the dad is not trying to protect the child from this mill that he knows is going to end with death or prison. I mean, he sets it out at the beginning.
He sure
Death or
does.
prison. He's like, you can't be a cop. And, you want to imagine that these people would want their children to not have to deal with all this.
You would think so,
But
but no. Like he
no.
apparently did not care, which is another interesting aspect that I don't feel like we dealt with at all. Does the mom, so this was confusing to me. Does the mom know that the son is part of the family now?
Absolutely. They don't tell us this, show us this, or deal with this in the movie because there should have been a giant argument.
There should have been, right? There should be tension. Like,
you're drawing him back in.
Right, and she already lost one son at a young age, right? So she shouldn't want to lose a second son. Where is that? Where is I don't,
because that scene's not in the book, and they don't, and that's what I feel like they're trying to protect these characters almost.
Oh,
and
yeah,
so
big time.
it feel they're trying to sort of not make them look like Scarface. They're trying to make them look like it's okay.
Yep.
And it just,
but not even, it doesn't even feel like they're defending them as much as just saying like, well, they didn't really do anything. Like, yeah, that's what I get. And I don't want to see, well, we didn't do anything. I want to see like a defense of it.
Yes.
That's what I'd rather see.
It's like life is a jungle, kill or be killed. We're animal, There's a lot of very easy speeches where you can make the point that living an amoral existence is the right way to live in existence. Society breeds in us all this stuff to make society keep living. Then when you have someone predatory like Gotti, it's like they're the alpha predator, and they have a mindset of, I'm going to do whatever I need to do to protect me and my own.
Yeah.
And you never really felt that.
I never feel that.
Angelo dies of cancer, and then we have the big wedding.
Was it? I
have to admit, I went to my phone and just noodled on my phone during the whole wedding scene. So I gotta say, I really don't know what happened at the wedding.
Well, nothing.
There was singing and dancing, and yeah.
Yep, and that's pretty much it. There really wasn't. I'm curious if that was a big deal.
A wedding?
Like him, who he married, maybe. Because I don't understand why the wedding's even in the movie, because we never really deal with her character at all. Other than, sorry.
Because it's in the book.
I mean, sure. I guess that's, I guess that's an actual answer to that, but it's not a good answer to that for why you put it in this movie. We never deal with her character. I don't know anything about her. Is it a big deal that he's marrying this woman? Is she not is she accepted? Is she not accepted? I don't know why I'm seeing this. The movie isn't about the son. John Gotti doesn't seem to really give a shit. So I don't understand why the scene is even happening. I have no idea.
Well, it's that test. Is it the Bechdel test? Is that what it's called?
Yes, that's close.
Something like that.
Yeah.
I don't think I've heard anybody ever say it. I think I've just read it. And that's the whole thing, where for a movie to work, it has to have a scene where two women talk to each other and they're not talking about men.
Yes.
I do not believe Victoria and the wife spoke a word in the entire movie.
There's no way that it passes that test. Not even a chance.
And so you don't, once again, you've introduced a character that is part of a plot. It allows you to put weddings and things in there, but it's not a character that drives anything forward or confronts a character or challenges a character to actually do something or say something that might make us feel something or think about something.
Mm-hmm. I'm just not, the more that we're talking about, the more I just want to see a movie about John Jr.
Yeah. Yeah. I think there's a good John Jr. movie in there. I mean, I think you'd have to fictionalize a fair amount of it.
Sure, but it's a movie. That's what you should be doing. You should be making it a little bit more exciting, a little bit. I don't know, but I would love to see like this young guy growing up in the shadow of his father, who's this big crime lord, and then kind of supposedly takes his place for a little bit. And we skate the shit over that at the end of the movie. It's just like, oh, by the way, and John Jr. took over, and then all this happened, and now we're at the end, and I'm like, wait, the guy took over? What happened? He was nobody. How did he take over? What did he do? And apparently nothing, because he was tried 5 times and got off. Is that what it was, or something like that?
I guess he must have done the 3 years or some amount of it. And then they tried him for 3 more years as they moved him around to prisons, or 37 months for 5 more trials over 37 months. And then finally Junior was free.
Right. And I'm interested in that story, but I don't see it.
We don't see it. We don't understand it. We don't care about it.
Exactly.
And then the movie just sort of rolls. I mean, do we even have Gotti's funeral?
No. No, I don't believe we do. Do we?
Yeah, I don't think we did. I think
I might have fallen asleep during this movie.
you did.
I did not. I did not. I was riveted.
So that's pretty much the whole movie. There's at least one other major thing we need to talk about.
Bring it in.
The music.
Oh my God, I have so many notes on this, Dan. Oh no, I can't believe we skated over this. This should have come up every 4 seconds.
Well, no, I wanted to save it so we could do this magnum op. This is sort of the not the final critique, but just this thing that needs to be dealt with in one slot. Yes.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts, Tony?
My
about
thoughts
the
are,
music
who the fuck chose this music? None of it makes any sense. So I'm trying. I was going to do research about it, and then I was like, I can't think anymore on this movie. I'm so over this. But were they just popular songs of the year that we're supposed to be in by any chance? Because if that's not the case, if it's not like trying to place me in a time by saying this is the hit song of this month that we are in, I have no idea why any of this music is in the movie. It doesn't fit at all.
Well, there's 3 or 4 Pitbull songs in here, so those were
not.
The very first one, all about John Gotti and how everything's about respect and honor, which it really never was because he just kills Paul like a dog, the boss that he has literally sworn to honor forever, as the Cosa Nostra says.
Right, so they talk a lot about rules in this. Okay, you know what? Let's stick with music.
We're doing
and then we'll move on. I'm sorry. Yeah.
And it comes into you really start to know it when they start playing the Pet Shop Boys.
Which song is that?
The West End Town and West End Girl.
Which I really like that song.
It's a great catchy tune, and it's sort of there's sort of a tie-in to the movie, but it's just like because there's like a you're better off dead. There's a gun in your face and you're better off dead. So there's a line, the line or two kind of ties into where they're at.
But so so let's say that is the case, right? So that one song kind of connects to the scene, the very specific scene that we're watching. That song, just a little bit. But that song doesn't connect at all to the song before it. Or after it, there's no consistency. There's no like general feel of the movie. It's all over the place. Who
walk like an Egyptian?
It's like someone put it on iPod shuffle mode and just pushed record and was like, you know what? No one's really gonna pay attention to the music. There's so much cool stuff happening on screen. We can put whatever we want. I forgot "Walk Like an Egyptian" came on in this movie. It's so bananas.
I think was it when somebody was getting out of jail?
Yeah, I think yes. I think it was.
And then we have the Duran Duran.
Oh my
when
God.
You come on down.
Yep.
Who do you need? And they're all good songs.
Sure. No one's arguing individually that they're entertaining.
The last big one, House of the Rising Sun.
Oh,
when Gotti dies. There is a house in New Orleans as Gotti's dying.
Was there a funeral? Now that you say that, maybe they drove through town in a parade. Maybe that was real clips. That could have been one of like the real news clips.
I think when he dies, they go to the people, and the people are all like, John Gotti was the man. We love him the most. Yeah, I think so.
Again, I love that idea. And the fact that those are real clips and like people genuinely loved him. I want to see that movie. I want to see him. I want to know why. I want to feel like how they feel. Anyhow, but so real quickly.
Well, I think that's a real big point is that these people's connection to John Gotti was through the tabloids and through the news. It was not through their human interactions with him.
For sure.
They would, that whole, the Teflon Don and the Dapper Don, that stuff was all in the news as people watched him go to court. And they were like, Don gets off again, you know, and they would cheer, for whatever, because kind of like the whole Trump thing now,
Yeah.
where they exist as this sort of underdog, this person that, a certain people are rooting for, just not really based on anything, just based
Yeah.
on them sticking it to the system. It's a whole sort of anti-system thing. And,
Yeah.
they're not thinking about that this guy could have walked up and killed one of their neighbors for whatever reason.
Yeah. I mean, that's fair.
What were you going to say?
I don't remember. It doesn't. None of it matters.
None of it matters.
Nothing matters anymore. This movie
This was
deeply
your-
upset me.
This was your so let's
know.
get some final thoughts about you choosing to have us watch this movie.
I genuinely thought it was going to be one of those movies that's super fun because it's bad. Like, so not even so bad it's good, but so bad that I make fun of it for the whole movie and I'm having a great time. I didn't have a great time with this movie. I was frustrated and spent most of it just being like, why are you making these choices? There's so much better stuff in this story that you are supposed to be telling me that you messed everything up. You ruined everything to me. That's how I felt. They ruined everything. How do you feel? What are your thoughts? Wrap it up.
I mean, that's it's so interesting to sort of compare it to, the mistakes of Benjamin Button, which we watched earlier.
Last week. Yeah.
Yeah, Benjamin. I mean, we probably shouldn't be constantly referring to other movies, but whatever.
That's
I mean,
fine.
it's about movies, so all you can do is refer to movies.
Yeah.
Benjamin Button was this giant, bloated, expensive thing that tried to do this thing and failed. This is very similar. There was a ton of money on the screen. I mean, a fair amount of money.
Yeah.
I think it was expensive. Well, 10 million.
10 million.
I don't know. Okay, 10 million.
For
But
an indie film, that's still, like, it's not a studio blockbuster for sure, but as an indie film,
they got a lot out of that 10 million. It
Sure.
looked,
Sure.
it looked good. The set dressing was, they kept the time period well. Everybody was dressed. There were big crowds. Everyone looked right. The makeup was here, there, whatever. But this thing failed, like, just from the script. Just from the script, and just that, the log line was, we kind of see John Gotti's whole life, and it's sort of about his interactions with his son. And this is sort of why I don't like biopics, because you're constrained. You're constrained to try to tell a story where lives are not stories. Lives are lives. And, just like Benjamin Button sort of tried to do that. They sort of tried to do a life as opposed to tell a story. They were like, we're going to examine his life. Well, if you're examining his life, you're never going to get anywhere. You need to examine an idea, or, you have to have a log line. You have to say, this is about a character who, has to live with a world that is, degrading before his eyes, as he does not degrade.
Yeah.
And then this thing needed to be, this is a story about a son who is drawn into his father's dark world. What will that choice be?
Right. Yeah. And we don't really, he just does it. We never deal with any of that. It was just, I didn't even understand. Again, sorry, I know we just did final thoughts, but I have one more thought.
We're still in final thoughts.
Okay.
We're not done. Final thoughts never ends until it's over.
I was confused on John Jr. because when he's at the academy, he sees the news and his dad's getting arrested. Am I to believe that that's the first time he knows his dad is a bad guy? And then we
don't know that. And that's
okay.
That's another thing is if we were in John Jr.'s brain, we would see that first time in his life where he's like, a kid would walk up to him and say, your dad's an asshole and kills guys. And he'd be like, go home, Mom.
Like, what's going on?
What is Dad? She's like, I got to sit you down so that you understand we live this life this way because this is our life. We don't understand. I mean, and for that matter, did you know whether or not he was Italian or Sicilian?
No, I still don't.
and he must be Sicilian because I think most of the Cosa Nostra are Sicilian. But
Okay.
we never really deal with that sort of approach to heritage, and that's very important.
That's very also, weren't there, isn't it like the five families? Isn't that the New York mafia? Isn't that what they are, like the five families?
Yeah,
Why don't does that not come, why doesn't that come into play at all in the
we
story?
dealt with that. We dealt with
Did
that.
we?
The heads of the five families, after they're all sitting at that table after they kill Paul. They go to that table and Gotti's sitting there.
That's who those people are?
Oh yeah, no, the Colombo family. Those were the guys. Those were the heads of the five families. But and there's a see you don't see that's the you they don't really lay it out that well. And if you don't have a
No.
basic knowledge of
Yeah.
it, they assume you know a lot of stuff.
They did. I feel like I
And-
should have done research before I watched the movie, I
And
guess.
before he kills Paul, there's a whole thing where he's like, they have to sort of not pay off, but they sort of shake hands with everybody to make sure the other families are going to be okay with Paul getting killed.
Right. Okay. So that's the rules. That's what I was going to bring up, is there are a ton of mafia rules that I was unaware of. And I don't, like, they kind of just say them as the son is being inducted, or at least a couple of them. I wish I wrote it down somewhere. Oh, rules. Okay. So as they're inducting John Jr., they're like, don't sleep with a made man's wife. We don't fuck with bombs. Don't endanger civilians. The use of drugs is prohibited. But I'm assuming that they can sell them. They just can't use them. Is that right?
I think that's a whole point of contention where I mean I don't know this absolutely, but I'm pretty
Okay.
sure there was a point at which probably in the 70s where the old school mobsters wanted to just be like, we just do gambling and prostitution, and then the younger school, that's always been a sort of push and pull, is dealing
Okay.
drugs.
So
Not ever dealt with in this movie.
okay, so I wish that it was like, I want, because I think I read part of John Gotti's problem with Paul is that Gotti was kind of, now this is, I might be wrong, was like dabbling and selling drugs a little bit, and Paul was against it, so they had like this tension between them.
I see, that makes perfect sense, but once again, you're trying to protect these characters, so you can't say that Gotti's a drug dealer.
But that's
Because
yeah,
that turns us, that's, I mean, it's one thing to have people killed, especially if you're killing within your own subgroup.
group. Yep.
But once you're a drug dealer, you're a goddamn drug dealer.
I mean,
I
guess.
like,
yeah.
you're not gonna get to the end and say, oh, the police are the bad guys, for putting away a drug dealer. You're gonna be like,
No. Yeah.
stop these stupid drug dealers.
Which I guess that's why I hate the movie, just in general. Then I think what you just said encapsulates why I hate this movie, is because they're protecting them.
Yeah.
And so we don't get any of the grit, the realness of what's actually happening, and that's what I wanted to see. I don't know. I wanted to see that, and I didn't get it.
And I mean, that's the whole ending of Godfather 2 and Scarface, which I don't think I've ever seen the whole Scarface either.
Oh, rad
He
movie.
goes crazy at the end of Scarface, but he's like this giant cocaine, he's just, the cocaine's just flowing up his nose,
And
and
it's
you're just
awesome.
like, we love him, but when he gets, I assume he gets destroyed or killed or whatever,
Yeah.
he gets super killed.
Mhm.
You're like, he's a hero because he's done it his, it's a my way.
Yes.
It's,
Yes.
I did it. At the end of Godfather, it's like the son has become the father, and he's just the process has
Mhm.
continued into, when he was a compassionate normal person, going through the process of doing this makes you not that.
Yeah.
You are not a good person. You may do good things occasionally, but you're not a good person.
Which,
Even if you love your family, you're not a good person because you're selling drugs.
but I love that dichotomy in a character. Like, obviously not in real life. I'm not a fan of those people, but that's what makes this person interesting, is that they are kind of a family man, and they're beloved in the community, but they're a terrible person. That's what I want to see. That's the movie.
So that's Gotti. Final note on Gotti. What does Gotti have on Rotten Tomatoes as a score?
I don't know if it still does, but it's 0%, right? It's one of the
0%.
only ones to ever done it. Maybe the only one. I don't know.
There's like 20 movies on there that are 0%ers,
Jesus.
and it's one of them.
That's
And
almost too high.
yeah. So we're gonna do our things we have enjoyed in the last week, and
Wait.
Tony picked oh yeah, what? You have more to say?
I want one note. I wrote one note. I just found it. The walk like an Egyptian. I did remember it was in there. This is my direct quote from my notes. Walk like an Egyptian. What the fuck is happening? Fuck you, music people. That was my direct note that I wrote down.
Our final note is fuck you, music people, because they're the
music
problem.
people. I mean, if the movie's terrible, at least if there's like a cool soundtrack, I can just jam out and forget I'm watching a terrible movie. But that didn't happen. I was confused.
It was not like Bad Boys 2 or anything like that, where you just
so good.
Keep it coming. Okay.
Sorry, I'm done.
So last week we started our new thing, which of course, since last week was our first one, it's just our thing.
It's just a thing.
Our pick of the week. Tony, of course, thinking we were going to pick movies, but Tony, of course, broke with that immediately and picked the TV show. So this week, I'm picking a TV show, and the TV show I'm picking is Stargirl.
Which one?
The real one.
So not the Disney Plus one.
The superhero one, the CW or whatever.
The DC one.
DC Comics one.
Yes.
Have you watched it?
Yes. I love it.
It's great. It's just normal. I mean, all the DC superhero ones on TV have been really good. I watched Flash. It's a show I'm not going to watch every episode of, and I'm not going to watch it forever. But it's like a show you can turn on and just feel like it's normal television with fun, interesting characters. You've got Luke Wilson or Owen Wilson?
Luke
Wilson. Luke Wilson? It's Owen Wilson.
No, it's Luke Wilson. I promise you.
Luke Wilson, who's great. It's like Amy Smart, who's great, and hopefully they use her some more.
Yep.
Because she still needs, we need a little more of her. And you're just like, oh my God, she's so great. And the kids are great, and the villains are great. It's just like really nice.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I enjoy it a lot. And I'm jumping on your bandwagon here. I am a DC fan. I love the DC.
Wait, this is
TV
your pick?
universe.
Are you hitting us with your pick?
No.
Now,
I'm just affirming your pick real quick.
Okay.
I also love it. That's all I'll say. All right. DC TV is great. And that's a good one. Hit
us with your pick.
My pick was also going to be a TV show, but since you're going TV, I'm switching and I'll do a movie this week. The movie that I watched this week, and you may not agree with this, but Eurovision on Netflix.
I was thinking about picking that as a movie we could do.
I mean, you can, but I love it. I had a great time. It's not as funny as some of his top movies from back in the day, but it's almost the most real movie he's ever done. And not real like, oh, it's real and grounded, but just like it feels like a movie. There's like a story. There's real characters. There's some really great moments. There's a love story. Like I was just like, this is like a genuinely good romantic comedy.
I wish they'd have done a better trailer because the trailer made it look like it was going to be trash.
So bad. The wife and I watched it thinking it was going to be garbage. And then we were like, oh my God, we are having a good time. It's stupid. It's cute. It's fun. I love it. Give it a shot.
And I think that's going to happen to us on here. We will pick things that we go into and go like, this is going to be a problem. But, once you get in there, you're like, because that's the thing. I love Will. I think he's hilarious. But some of the movies are very rough.
Yeah.
And, and then some of the movies, I was watching Anchorman 2 a while ago for the first time. I hadn't seen it before. And, what's his name opens that whole restaurant with the bats. And he's like selling bats. And you're just like, oh my God, this is like one of the funniest bits I've ever seen.
Yeah.
And so Will hits it. Will does it. Will does the.
I liked it a lot. I think it's at the very least it's worth watching.
Okay. Well, I'll watch it. I'll watch it this week and give you my unabashed opinion.
Okay. I mean, or we could do it for next week. Whatever you want to do.
Oh no. So.
Oh boy.
So I went to the vault.
Oh no! I pissed you off, didn't I?
No.
Okay.
Well, you did piss me off because Gotti was such a waste, and I'm like, never again Never again are we going to go down this. I'm
Never
picking a
again.
movie that is going to be of, 1988. Is that a year that you like, Tony?
Oh yeah. That was like my
Yeah.
prime, man. I was 3 years old.
Orion Pictures.
Okay, that's a good start too. I'm
Good
in.
start. Music by Alan Silvestri.
I don't know who that is.
Exactly.
Do I? Okay.
Directed by Stuart Rafil.
I don't know any of these people.
Producers Mark Damon, William B. Kerr, R.J. Lewis.
Ah, classic. R.J. Lewis.
Written by Steve Feeke. Stuart Rafil, also
producer
writing.
and writer. Good for you, guy.
Starring Christine Ebersol,
Who?
Jonathan Ward, who I think might be one of the kids on Home Improvement.
Okay.
Maybe. And then some more people.
Those are the leads?
Those are the two leads.
Okay.
The classic Mac and Me.
Mac and Me. Oh, okay.
Ever seen Mac and Me?
I actually never saw it as a kid. It sounds like something I would have watched as a kid. I just never did. I'm ready.
So Mac and Me, as you probably know or don't know, it's like an ET ripoff.
Oh, for sure. I can't wait for this. This is going to be fun.
And if you don't know, do you know how what's his name? Ant-Man?
Paul Rudd.
Paul Rudd, whenever he goes on late night talk shows, instead of playing a clip from his movie, he plays a clip
from Mac and Me?
Mac and Me. So that's the only reason I've ever heard of this movie. And the clip is amazing, so you should probably do that research before you watch it or after you watch it.
Okay. First of all, that's a great bit. Like, that's a really good bit.
He's been doing this bit for years. Years. He's been. I mean, maybe he doesn't do it on every show, but like at least on Conan and a few of them.
All right, I'm gonna find a clip of that.
Bit, and the clip is just like you're like, oh my god.
Okay.
It's like there's a cliff and a shopping cart and.
Okay, I'm ready.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. So I watched the first 5 or 10 minutes, and oh yeah, it's going to be good. So this is going to be we're going to be hate watching it, and we're going to tear it to pieces, but we're going to at least enjoy.
All right.
1980s as opposed to
movie
making or the tortured movie making of 2018, dream projects of John Travolta. Which are turned into torture projects for us all.
Which, I mean, by the way, this is definitely not the last Travolta movie we're going to do on this. so strap in for that. I'll give a reprieve for a little bit.
Okay. I think you and I both have growing lists of movies. That are going to be, how do you put it? Reactions to what we were put through the time before.
That's right. Yeah, we'll judge it as a case-by-case basis.
Yeah, so Mac and Me, I think we needed a little, after two movies that are heavy and painful and tiresome to watch, at least we get to watch something that'll make us feel like creators are trying to do something that's not just there to destroy what little psyche we have.
Which is very little. It's it's minuscule and it's chipping away.
Yeah, Tony.
You're in the movie. You're hired. Get in there.
One last thing. The female DA in the red dress. What do you have to say about that?
Which courtroom was she in?
Like the guy that gives that says that the one guy is there's confidential informant.
Is the informant? I don't even remember, Dan. Was she good? She wasn't good. Nobody was good. You know who else wasn't good? Was the lawyer. Like the fat, bald lawyer that was defending, I think it was John Jr. he was defending or something. I don't know. You know what? Doesn't matter. Some of the smaller characters, I think were hired just because they look like the people. Like it was like, it's almost like extras casting, right? They're like, you know what? This guy'll do. Okay, we don't need to audition him. He looks just like him or her. Sorry.
I want to make one last point.
No one's going to make it this far into the podcast.
Not about the movie, but about when you watch movies like this, they sink into your brain a little deeper.
Yeah.
And it's kind of sad.
Yeah. And they stick with you. Like, and it's just like this little nugget that I'll just return to, and I just get angry all the time. This is going to ruin us, I think, in the long run.
It's a bad idea. Well, thanks, Tony.
Thank you, Dan. This was a treat.
It was not. I'll see you next week.
See you next week. Do your sign off.
See you at the movies.
Yeah!
I think that's what Rex Reed or one of those guys used to say.
Oh, so we can't steal it, is what you're saying.
No, we can't
We'll
steal
come up
it.
with a new sign off then for next week.
It was at the end of the not Leonard Maltin, but one of those movie review shows, not the Siskel and Ebert, but the sort of second rate. You know, I'll see you at them. Okay.
Well, it's a great sign off. So think of a new one.
Killed the whole energy of the show.
Well, you know what? We'll edit it right out.
Gone.
That's too much work. I'm not doing that.
Bye, Tony.
Bye, Dan.
Hey, watch him!